Hi. So today I'm going to interview Jason Ritchie, the director of the Diana Clone. So excited to interview him, a little bit nervous. So next time you see me, I'll be with Jason. Okay. Hi, Jason.
Hello, how are you doing, Matthew?
I'm really good, thank you. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
That's fine. It's a pleasure.
There's no sort of I'm not trying to sort of dig and and make anything, make you uncomfortable at anything. So or even ask things that you're not wanting to share. There's a sort of an amount of ambiguity that you want to leave with the film, so that people make up their own minds and interpret it their own way.
That's very much true. Yes. Yeah. You see modern art and you kind of have your own interpretation. Some things actually have like no specific meaning. Deliberately, they have a vague thing that could go two ways, and it's a kind of you take your own impression from it.
Yeah, that's true, and I like that. That's what I like. I mean, in a world of kind of very similar plots and very similar structures, this is a truly unique film. It is genre blending, I think, and it is unique. There is no other word for it, because when I watched it, and I think I watched it with a group of people, afterwards we talked about it for ages and ages, and I think quite a few of us had very different thoughts and opinions on it, and had understood parts that in a different way. So how important was it to you when you made the film that it was something that was maybe more challenging than sort of a traditional story structure? What was it that made you want to do that?
Well, I had a low budget, and I was 37 when I started writing it. And most people who go into film, they don't really care 100%. Maybe this doesn't apply to directors, but they're making a film in a series of hopefully 30 films in their career, and they want each one to build their career. They want each one to have a profit, no negativity. And as the budgets have gone up over the decades, I think film have become less risky. So part of this is me aging, so it's not 100% true. But in the 70s and 80s, I was genuinely surprised about what I would see a film. I go, wow, I've never seen that. That's taken me to a different mental world. And that's I noticed as the decades went on, the last 20 years particularly, things the quality was good, but the surprise was less. They were sticking more to the genre, more to the formula. I think as the budget of the films went up, and they couldn't take risks, they couldn't afford to lose money and end their careers. And so on a low budget, I thought, what can you make effectively? I thought, of the Hollywood type of films, you can't make any of them effectively, with one exception, probably horror. If you're like a genius person really into horror, then probably you can make a fantastic film if you have a great enough imagination. But it wasn't a genre that inspired me or that I was really into. So I thought, what else is cheap? Because I thought at that stage when I was starting out, I thought 20 grand is my maximum. I was told that's the minimum you can make a film for. I was thinking, what can you do that is not in competition with Hollywood? And I thought, what talents do I have? Well, I thought I'm basically a normal person, but I have a weird aspect on my mind and weird deep interest. So I thought, I'll go weird. And do I want it to be boring? No. So I'll make it a thriller, I'll make it have some suspense and danger. So I didn't want people to be bored. Experimental film is where people make sort of like very ponderous films, and they don't feel like watching till the end. I wanted as many people to watch the end, and I wanted it to have courage that Hollywood can't have. There are lots of ideas that will be shelved in Hollywood because no, you can't do that, it's too risky, or they'll sue, or I wanted to go places where Hollywood couldn't go. And I was a big believer that there were most people in the West thought there weren't taboos in the West, but I was a big believer there were taboos in the West, and I wanted to go there as best as I could.
That's really interesting. You talk about those taboos, and obviously, when we talked about doing the interview, you talked about the wearing, sort of, for want of a better way, like a disguise or a way of concealing your kind of. Is that because of the taboos? Is that because of there are certain places that the film goes that you would be concerned that people, would take take offense to, or what are the reasons behind that kind of concern?
Well, we live in a world where cancel culture is condoned, and it wasn't like that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s and noughties. But it's become a thing where it's considered good to end people's career, to harm them, to be aggressive en masse, and a lot of the. I'm a personal believer that a film about morality can't be immoral. So I made a thriller about morality, and I doubt very much in my mind that's immoral. But other people have lots of different opinions, and also sometimes I work for the government, and if you work for the government, you got to be very careful what you do, because you represent, in a way, indirectly the government.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's really interesting. That, and in talking about challenges, and I know you said about budget, and also I imagine that was the biggest challenge. Challenge of kind of being true to yourself and being aware of outside influences, I guess, in the world. What other challenges were there when making the film? Was there any like logistical, physical, or even emotional challenges while making the film? Because it looks like you didn't. It's not like it was all in one room, or there was only one or two actors. You really put everything that you had on the screen.
I mean, I've kind of ruined myself financially. I mean,
Right, so that was the challenge.
My future retirement, my future life is poorer than it would have been. So that's why people don't want to film in one room if they're very, very low budget. But I couldn't. There are very few films filmed in one room that I want to watch. I just thought if if I was to make a good film, it had to be the best film I could imagine. And there were some real constraints. I love moving a camera. I couldn't afford to move the camera to get hired equipment to move the camera. So you'll see a lot of still shots. Occasionally there are digital zooms and things like that. And on one shot at the start, they built, like the A Team from the 80s. They built a track that you could push the camera, just out of stuff they found in the backyard. It was just a financial. It's very financially hard not for things to spiral out of control, and they did kind of spiral out of control. I went way over 20, and it took me years to pay it off, and I was kind of depressed for a year, actually. After I submitted it to festivals, it's so competitive in festivals because they're getting like 4,000 films, feature films, 3,000, 2,000 feature films. It's very hard to get into good ones,
and
especially
and then from submitting a few short screenplays to sort of writing competitions, there are some that I could enter that are free, and then there's some that are quite expensive to enter. So that's a monetary concern as well, isn't it? When you're entering the film festivals, that you do have to pay.
Yeah.
So.
But it's just part of the course. I kind of knew that I didn't. I wasn't financially wise. I basically I had a lot of creative urge, but I didn't know. I couldn't really find an outlet. But then I made a short film, and it was appreciated, and it got into festivals, and it was what it was like. My vision was kind of realized in it. I thought, wow, I'm 37. It's now or never. I didn't think I can definitely write a film screenplay. So I started writing. After a year, I thought, yeah, I want to make this, and I thought, time clock is ticking. I got to get on and do it.
When you've got those initial ideas, and sometimes it's a horrible feeling to shelve an idea, isn't it, or just to go, oh, and put it to one side. When you had that initial idea, and I don't want to, any spoilers or anything, because or certainly what you have in mind, because like you say, there's so many different paths people can take with this film. How did you kind of sketch out that outline? Did it take you a long time to create it, or did it just flow and you were like, you had this in your mind for quite a long time? What was the process of kind of creating it without going too deep in the actual specifics?
So we're talking about 2007. It was a very chaotic process. I initially had the idea that I basically have an everyman, like you get in some films like North by Northwest or the 39 Steps, or even Rear Window. Basically, you've taken every man and he finds himself in an adventure in the end. And then I just started just having themes and ideas and played with them and thought, where could it go? And in the end, something just evolved out of that very chaotic process.
Because you mentioned a lot of the influences on screen. It says, like, David Lynch is mentioned, and which I certainly saw. And you mentioned the Coen brothers, that those things are mentioned on screen. You're obviously a lover of film and a lover of certain creators. When you were putting together the film, your aspirations, I guess, was to make a film on a massively lower budget, but with the same heart and soul as those creators that you admired, I imagine.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to match them in courage. I wanted to match people in courage. In terms of filmmaking, I wanted to go into unexplored areas, and Hollywood has a point. The genres kind of work. It's just that I'm fed up with them. I'm so seen them done so many times so well that they don't interest me at all. So I can't remember your question actually, but
well, no, just kind of how influence. No, it's fine. It was quite a long one as well. So it was more to do with that, sort of those influences and those other creators that you mentioned in the whether it be Lynch or the Coen brothers.
So I mean, a bit of that's in sincerity. The Coen brothers, I put on the marketing because it's kind of vaguely weird worldy. They are weird worldy, but really, there are some filmmakers that blew me away, and I guess that I'm not as a big a film fan as some filmmakers. There are some filmmakers I just really think are special or inspiring, and I tend to watch those again and again. And then there are the odd films that capture my attention, Harold and Maude or whatever they may be.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, for me, like, I had to study David Lynch films, but I wouldn't say he was like one of my favorite directors, but I certainly appreciate him and understand like the creativity and every film being so different, and I'm kind of almost got a headache after watching the films from trying to I enjoyed that side of it. And I don't think anybody could be bored watching the Diana Clone, because there's so much happening and you really have to keep up as you're watching it. So what was, when you showed it to the people who were maybe in the film, or other people who saw it initially, what was that response like? How did people respond to it? Like, because it's quite a large cast for for a low budget film, and lots of involvement there. So how did people take the film?
They were in shock. I just showed. I just showed it to them after I think a couple of years at a small venue, a small boutique kind of cinema in London, and they were kind of open mouthed. I think filmmakers like people who are really into film find it interesting. That's why it was shown at Sheffield, I think Hallam University, because where there's like a lot of filmmakers and animation people, because they're really into film. They kind of saw it as maybe something brave or different. I think a lot of people find it too repulsive, and a few people have said they couldn't watch it all the way through. Even some of my friends.
Right.
Like
Oh,
there's,
wow.
sometimes people are a bit, disturbed. There's the scene with the mother and the daughter. I had a couple of people who said they couldn't watch beyond that. Some people who are religious
Right.
find they
Yeah.
can't watch it.
That's
So there's also,
interesting.
I think by this stage, probably the most of the commercial type of films that appeal to 60% of people have been found, and they're the ones Hollywood have mined. I guess I put Lynch in there because he kind of did weird films and made them work and made them successful. So that's an achievement. Even though he's not my favorite filmmaker, he did something extremely brave in the 80s, isn't it? You've got to give him credit from that point of view.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. He's someone who, the remote, a bit like, I suppose Cronenberg's another one where, I find some Cronenberg films quite hard to watch, some of the earlier ones. But I'm glad I watched them, and I think that's kind of almost something to aim for, and it goes back to what you were saying about people taking those brave risks in the 70s and 60s and maybe the early 80s. You're talking about a sort of like it is a risk in so many ways if you are thinking about money and you're thinking about how people are going to receive it. So it's brave making a film anyway, because you're going, here's my film, what do you think, at some point to someone. So I think that's really brave, because to you, who's putting a film out there, which you're kind of making it so, I don't know what the word is really, sort of so non-linear that people you're almost challenging them not to like it.
And some people rise to that challenge, maybe. But
we had a great weekend after watching it. Me and my friends, because we were just like, so what? My friend did like a little edit of it. I think you may have seen it actually. He edited it all together like a little fan edit.
Sorry, is that the mini trailer, 50-second?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. It's better than the
was
real
like,
trailer.
well, he was like, oh, that's really nice. He'll be watching this, so that's really nice. That's Rick, who he posted it on his YouTube page, and then I'm going to post it again tonight before I edit together this. So when you were getting the actors together and the people to be in the roles, how much did you want them to know about the characters they were playing? How much was kind of almost directed scene to scene? Because it's, did they get to see the whole script, or?
Yeah, so I've done acting classes. I took it quite seriously. I did it for a year, and I've acted myself. You have to really be in the character and have some energy and intensity. You have to have I think to write it also, you have to have a real detailed picture of the person, their whole life story in your mind, so you know where they are at that moment in that scene, what their objective in life is, how that scene relates to it. So everything. But you've got to give the actor leeway to create that story themselves a bit, but not to the point that it goes against the what the film wants the character to portray. So everything's they would read the whole script, every bit of themselves they would highlight, every line, and then it's up to them. It's their job to really analyze what the main thing with an actor is, what's their super objective, what they want in this film. and what are they going? And generally, to make their acting focus, they choose one thing. So presumably, when you see a very focused actor like Robert De Niro, they're looking focused because in their mind they have one focus. They're going to, overcome anything that gets in their way. And I think that's the way most actors work. And so I would talk to things for them. I came into conflict with the lead actor, who the great thing is, if you in London and you have an eye for a good actor, you can get good actors and not have to pay them a thing that you can't afford, because there's the supply is huge, but the demand is generally low. And even before streaming kicked off, there was even a bigger surplus there, maybe. And but there was a bit of a conflict because, like, I remember one scene with the actor, I wanted him to be concerned about the priest's head priest, his like superior priest's sexual promiscuity. But this was like before Me Too, and sexual promiscuity and sexual manipulation wasn't considered that bad.
Right.
Maybe in 2010, and or it wasn't such a cultural phenomenon. A justifiably culturally strong phenomena, but I wanted it to be in the film. This was like set in the set in the past, the 60s maybe, or something before the current era. And so I wanted him to, and he's a priest, I wanted him to be prudish, and the actor didn't want to, and that bothered me. But so
because
you can't 100% it. You can't 100% it.
No, he because he's in the majority of the scenes, if not all of them. I think maybe all of them.
It's all about him.
Yeah. So some of the things with the priests earlier on, you think that's when I thought, oh, we're going in one direction here. This is what's going to happen, and then it definitely from that moment, from it sort of forks off, and you can kind of go in lots of different directions and to kind of understand or try and understand what is happening. And one question that came out of it for me was this idea of a Diana clone, and feel free to just say I don't want to talk about this because I was just trying to think who. Maybe in the real world now, if this had really, this was non-fiction, who would benefit from that possession of the Diana clone the most? What would they get from it? I know that's a strange question. It's almost like a non-fiction question about a fictional film, but like, I just say, I don't want to answer it.
Well,
but,
I mean, it's horrible, but anybody who's famous these days can be a multimillionaire. So if you control somebody who's famous, you're also kind of a millionaire. So
like
fame
a puppet
in
master
itself,
kind of thing, yeah.
I mean, in the 70s, there were footballers who ended up like living modest lives, Premier League footballers. But these days, if you're if you're famous, you are rich. So everybody's scrambling for fame, aren't they? So, in films that involve the MacGuffin is a very common ploy. It goes back to Jason and the Golden Fleece. Jason the Argonaut's going for the Golden Fleece. The Golden Fleece is unimportant, really, but it's a valuable thing that everybody's focused on. And I thought, why can't you have an interesting MacGuffin? Why does the MacGuffin have to be some tedious microfilm? Why couldn't it be something that's interesting for a change? So that's
it's a MacGuffin that's definitely not been done before. We don't need to check our notes to do that. So yeah, exactly. If it was microfilm, it's a completely different film in a way, isn't it? It's certainly not as interesting. How does it feel when you kind of look at reviews and people go, like, for example, on IMDb, and give, like, you've got in reviews next to each other that say 9 out of 10, the weirdest film I've ever seen. It was a religious experience, and things like, and then next to it, 1 star. The plot. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like this. It was bizarre. It was this, and you're like right next to each other. That is as far away from two opinions that are as far away from each other as possible. How does it feel when you read that? Because personally, I don't know. I'm probably not strong enough. I probably just ignore the 1-star one and focus on the the 8-star, the 9-star ones. Or sometimes just focus on the negative ones.
I mean, the film is grotesque, and I thought most people are not going to like it. You've got to be in the mood for a challenging there's this word, transgressive film. So you'll notice that the cult films on IMDb, or if you have a look at any film that you think, is that a cult? And you look at the graph of the ratings, the numbers on the bottom up to 10, you'll see 2 peaks. So there's the peak that most people find, and then there's the peak that a smaller number of people find. And I think that's quite a good definition of a cult film. You've got to have a minority of people who find it captivating.
Yeah, true. I agree, because I've been rewatching Pete Walker films, and at that period of time in the 70s, and there wasn't a lot of people able to make horror films in the UK. I think it's really him and Norman Warren. And as I was kind of looking at his films, I thought, I'm really enjoying this. This is right up my street. It is very strange. There's cannibalism. There's things that wouldn't, people would find quite shocking now, and da 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 da. And as I was watching it, I looked at the reviews, and again, it was exactly that. It was people who were like, this is just vile and horrendous. And people going, oh, this is amazing. I can't believe we made this in Britain. Like your film, I've seen, people say a future cult classic, 9 out of 10. And like, they're really, the people who like it, love it. And that's, I guess, as a creative person, and often when you interview other creative people, you tend to find that they do focus on the negatives more than anything else. And to be fair, it's the same in education. It's the same in quite a lot of careers where you are drawn towards, if you want to improve, then it's a fine line between wanting to improve and being kind of looking at things on an even keel, to just focusing on the negatives and ignoring the fact that somebody's going, no, I really enjoyed this. I thought this was great. What sort of lessons do you think that you have taken from this film, for anything you want to do in the future, or just in terms of making a movie, or if you were to give advice to someone else, whatever it is, what have you taken from the whole thing, being able to look back on it?
I really put myself into the film, and I was really absorbed in the making of it. And if you're totally absorbed in something, I found it was quite a joyous thing. So I made all the props for the film, and it took me a year of hammering away in my flat, and I bought all the props, and it was actually a great year of my life. I was just absorbed, in the flow,
just fully
absorbed in
immersed in doing
something,
it.
working towards a greater goal, and that's what that's one thing. Really, it was a bit personal. I like the creative process. I growing up, I would never have known where my mind would take me. I never have thought that I could make a film. But if you follow your interests and keep an open mind, it's very strange where life can take you. And it's actually quite inspiring and interesting journey. Going back, so that's something. I'm going back to people disliking it. I remember I took out the leading actor and actress, Anna Leon Brophy, who plays a few parts, and Sam Clemens. I took them to a restaurant. I told them, I don't think this is going to have the creative and public acclaim of Casablanca. And I was just joking. Because in a way, I was saying that, like most people are not going to get on with this film. And because you've got to know, know yourself, know what you're doing. I really wanted to make a different and brave film, and maybe it takes real genius. Maybe you have to actually, be in the category of something like a genius to pull it off. Quentin Tarantino in his first 2 films did the altered time sequence, I think, and he pulled it off. And he was working at genius level, maybe, I think, in those first 2 films. And David Lynch, maybe, I don't appreciate his genius because he did very weird films. I remember I saw a clip David Bowie talking about John Lennon. And he said about John Lennon, he would take the weirdest idea and make it work. And, so I didn't.
That's interesting.
You like some of John Lennon's I Am the Eggman song. What's it called? But it's
I Am the Walrus. Yeah.
I'm the Walrus. It's a very weird song. And mostly that would be like avant-garde, arty, not really catchy. But, he makes the whole thing captivating because he's John Lennon, and Across the Universe sounds like some sort of Indian thing, but he makes it, a classic song. And he can do that. And I just didn't want to put a glass ceiling to my mind.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I could achieve, but I wasn't going to say, limit my mind, so I tried to make as good a film as I could and be as ambitious as I could. And part of the film is like having is kind of I wanted to have some playful fun with making highbrow and lowbrow, because a lot of the themes in the film are what you would find in an Ingmar Bergman film, but with like an exploitation. Combining exploitation with Ingmar Bergman, saying, can you have some fun with it?
Yeah. And, that's really interesting way of putting it. Yeah, 2 completely different bedfellows. We've talked about those challenges of doing that. Yes, we talk about John Lennon making those and things like that, making those challenging creative choices. He also had the platform of doing something pretty successful and known and building that profile first. There's lots of people who go in those creative directions. I guess when you talk about someone like Lynch and Tarantino and you making this film, what you're doing is you're making those brave creative choices from the start, which is high risk or reward, isn't it? Really, it's because you're doing it straight away. It's not like you've made 5 TV movies, and then then tried something different, is what I'm saying, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to take risks. I think it's a shame if people are scared when they're making the arts to take risks. And even though there were lots of rubbish films in the 70s, there were lots and lots of bad films in the 70s and 80s. I think because the budgets were so lower and people would watch them. Even now a Netflix film is like so many millions, isn't it? And the mainstream films in the cinema, they're often usually tens of millions of pounds. But in the 70s, they had that ability because people were much willing to watch maybe lower budget stuff and maybe had lower standards in many respects. And so they could make these low budget films, make several of them. And the thing is, if you're serious, if you're like 100% dedicated to a career, like, if you're starting out as a teenager and you're making films in the 70s or the 60s, your whole life's ahead of you. And you have a lot of room to develop your skill. It's like Hitchcock's, after talkies came along, he was an established silent filmmaker. The talkies came along, he kind of spent 10 years making filmed plays that didn't work. And it took him 10 years to realize that filming a play doesn't really work. You have sound, but actually the silent filmmaking techniques, which he kind of was really skilled at or mastered in some ways, were what he needed to go back to. So if you watch Hitchcock's films chronologically, you'll find this time in the 30s where he just starts making pretty boring films of plays that are not his best films. Some they're done with some panache, but they're not his best films. And then at some stage he says, "Just a second, I did make the 39 steps early on, and that's when I was at my best. And let's make all my films kind of within that suspense subgenre, because that's actually where the magic is for him, for what was for
Right.
him."
Yeah.
I think.
Knowing yourself. Yeah. No, that's true. And I think like knowing yourself, and that was my big, not concern, but interest when we'd agreed to interview was like, when you said it, when you've just said about sitting down in the cafe and saying, I don't think people are going to receive this like Casablanca or, to I like it was interesting because I think it makes it a very different film if you think that this is going to be like, of course you have aspirations, but if you think it's going to kind of, there'll be this and the latest Marvel film are going to be kind of tying in the box office, I think you knowing yourself and kind of having an understanding of not necessarily your niche, but how, because I don't think it fits in squarely in any genre. So it's not like
No.
so it's not like anyone's going to go, oh, it's another one of these.
What I realize and kind of increasingly realized, first of all, I thought I can take a £20,000 hit. It's a lifelong thing. I'll take that hit, but I want to make my film. I think I did feel like the films coming to us in the cinema are very much retreading old ground in specific genres, very much sticking to the genre. And I thought, that's not great, but it is somebody's living, and they get they get a career out of it, which is the main point of most people making those films, to have a career out of it. They're very ambitious people in film. Extremely
and it's
ambitious.
harder and harder. Yeah, it's harder and harder, isn't it? Because there's only a certain films that do make it to the cinema in the UK. Funding is very, very sparse and very difficult, and that really narrows the field for people to have that wider success. It must feel good to know that you didn't compromise the creative side of it.
Yeah, I made the film knowing that it was like a spiritual film for me. It kind of like everything I'd experienced, I was drawing on. I think actors do this all the time. To be a good actor, you've got to draw on every molecule of your life. But it wasn't just a business exercise, like people who set up Burger King or work in Burger King are not trying to make the best food, but they know they can turn a profit. They know their market. But this wasn't going to be like that. I wanted just to challenge my mind, expand my mind. I had to do that. And, a lot of people in avant-garde do that, I guess, but they also don't really make money out of it. And I think to make money out of film, you have to make a genre film. I think you're not going to make, you're going to make a loss. You're going to see money go down the drain unless it's in a genre. And I think that's just the way business works.
Yeah, and there's some benefits to that in the sense of making that genre film that's low budget. For example, I've just been looking at a few of the Video Nasty films, and I've been looking at I Spit on Your Grave. Now, I think what makes that such a powerful film is that because it's so low budget, there's no Hollywood artifice, there's no kind of sheen there. It feels incredibly real, and that's what makes it so powerful and scary and worrying and thought-provoking. So those sort of limitations actually help, because you can't escape it and pretend you just got it's just a movie, because it doesn't really feel like a movie.
Yeah, that's very transgressive. I own that DVD. I also, there are some films that are supposed to be terrible, aren't they? Like Freddy Got Fingered.
Yeah,
I've seen
I've seen
it
that. I love
perfectly
that film.
film.
Yeah, it's really funny. It is a really funny film. It's funny. I think that's having a bit of a resurgence because I've heard a few people mention that, and I remember when it came out, it was like it's the worst film ever. Obviously there's the worst film ever in the sense of something like The Room where he's tried to make, he thought he was making, and he was certain he was making the greatest film ever made, which I think makes it a classic in that sort of good bad film. But then, because of the profitability and interest in things like that, there are people who make films who are trying to make a bad film, and I think that always stands out more because they're not, you can see that you just kind of roll your eyes because it's like, oh, you just put that in because you thought it would look bad, and well, it doesn't make sense. Whereas something like The Room, I think, in a way, it must be really hard. And I said this, like, it must be really hard to sit in a room and have everybody laugh at the film, knowing that he's put his heart and soul into it. No, I think he's come round to it because he's made a lot of money out of it. But that probably helps.
It must have been. I mean, I think he seems like a nice guy. I think he's probably got some sort of maybe a brain injury or something. He had a car crash. He put over £1 million into that film, I believe, and you can see it on screen. To look that good, it costs a lot of money, and but there is actually, that's a brilliant. It's kind of like a brilliant accident. Obviously, many people have said that about The Room, but there is actually something good about the plot. He stumbled at, maybe because he made it personal. The scenario of the plot is actually quite captivating. You could write a play about it. A brilliant director could rewrite maybe a play and make a watchable play out of it. And he's kind of stumbled on it. He hasn't deliberately acted bad. That's just him.
And
it makes it wonderfully watchable.
I feel like he watched the Tennessee Williams play or one of the adaptations and maybe thought, I'll do that, and then it's kind of been filtered through a range of different things, like, say, whether it's his abilities, his understanding of English, it's been filtered through so many different things. Then we get to what is a completely different. I do think there is some real value, like some of these films like that. Like I can think of a few where I've enjoyed and got more out of watching them than most films that I have to watch that are made for millions and millions and millions and millions. So, like, who's to say that there's no value to that? There's loads of value to that. It goes back to Freddy Got Fingered. It's a funny film. It is a funny film. And it's hard to make a funny film.
It's sincere. A lot of these films are sincere and brave. And there are people actually making the film that they want to. And
yes,
it's very hard, actually. What I'm discovering in filmmaking, it's very hard not to make a film that is, it takes all your effort to make a film that people can watch and is watchable. And it's like 10 times harder making a feature film than it is making a 15-minute film or 10-minute film. It's very hard to make something captivating, and it takes, a lot of your soul. And writers make genre films, but they, have years of experience and study of how to shape and structure a plot, and they make the classic films. When I go to Paris, you see women who wear the classic dress, the classic black dress. But I always find it a bit boring. The classic is, I kind of prefer the English punky approach, and it takes all sorts.
Yes,
doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, everybody needs to hopefully have access to watching or seeing some art that interests them, I feel I have a really good understanding of your kind of process in doing the film without us going through it beat by beat, which I'm glad we didn't, because I really hope people, I'll put the link to the YouTube page. I know it's available on Amazon. A friend of mine rented it on Amazon the other night because I was mentioning I was interviewing you and no, it's all right, you're welcome. And we'll try and get the numbers up as well on the YouTube, because I think we're over 1,000 people have watched it now, which is, if they were all in a room, that's a lot of people, which is fantastic. And I think people need to experience this for themselves. We haven't, and people can rest assured, we haven't even scratched the surface of actually what is in the film. So
Yeah.
if you're watching this video now, please, people, go and watch it, and you know, and comment underneath and tell Jason what you think, what you liked, anything. I'm sure you're open to just listening to what people feedback on it. Full stop. Do you encourage that? How do you feel about those comments coming up underneath the film? Because
Well, I
YouTube can be
think
a bit
it's
wild.
any comment, anything, any response, I feel is a wonderful thing. You know, I think the film has some very important issues in it, and it kind of like is a spiritual film for me. And though I was a bit frustrated that there are some things that don't seem to be in the public consciousness, and some of them, and I want to put them in a film. Some of them came into the public consciousness, but still. You know, there are some things that I mentioned at the start. Stockholm Syndrome. I think if people are dominated, they tend not to, a lot of the time, and it's been lifelong, they tend not to complain because they kind of have Stockholm Syndrome. And I don't think there's much public and real discussion or awareness of that. I felt that abuse is, for many complex reasons, abuse is something that is, there's abuse against women, which after this was written in 2007 and 8, it was, you know, I thought that was an issue that was like being subdued in society. And after the Me Too movement, it went the other way. The Me Too movement is about adults, and I think children are actually have a heightened importance over adults for a few obvious reasons, I think.
Yeah, that vulnerability, and like you say, and maybe people don't. Going back to what you were saying about Stockholm Syndrome, people maybe, you know, it's important to kind of understand, I guess, that when people are being subdued and held down or dominated in a relationship or a family relationship, it, you know, people often go, "Oh, why don't you just leave?" Or "Why don't you just do this?" And there isn't that kind of greater understanding of control and, you know, suppression, and I think if anything that highlights that is important, because it's very, very easy, and I think we do live in a world where people just take an opinion and go, "Oh, well, I would have just done this," and you go, "Well, actually, if you were in that position, you don't know what you would have done. You don't know
Yeah.
how you would behave." Empathy and understanding is so, and sympathy, you know, are really important when it comes to understanding people's, you know, lives.
You know, there are fashion beliefs are, I think, a bit like fashions in some ways, and some things are fashionable to believe in, and what certain ways of thinking are fashionable, and they come in and out of fashion, and they never tell the whole story as one way of thinking about something.
True. Yeah, we tend to be in a bit of an echo chamber now, where we just follow. We only see people's opinions that agree with our own, therefore they're the right ones.
Yeah, it's a real big problem.
Yeah, I think being able to actually disagree with somebody and not fall out with them, and, you know, have a adult conversation is so
Yeah.
important to understanding. You might not say, "Well, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different," and that's fine. You know, and one thing I will say about this film is, thank you for making a film that is different, that allowed me and my friends to have loads of conversations over breakfast. We really enjoyed watching it, and we got so much out of it. And it's so brilliant to be able to reach out and talk to you about it. I feel really privileged, and I hope that the more people watch the film, the more they'll
Yeah.
maybe, you know, really you'll get that lots of people saying the similar things to what I'm saying now.
In my dreams, it's played. It's the B movie at a cult, like a regional cult cinema screening. It's like
Yeah.
supporting another film, and that would be a dream.
Maybe
So
one day, maybe one day
maybe one day.
I'll get a bit of money and I'll put on my own mat fest, and we'll screen it and we'll get you up on stage and we'll do the whole thing. That'd be amazing. That would be so good. I'd love to do that. I would love to do that. You know, sharing brilliant films and interesting films. I think more than brilliant films, because I could just like get the top 10 films of all time and show them, but people have seen them. I think interesting and challenging films would be an amazing thing to put up and let people see in a kind of film festival or a screening night or something like that. It would be amazing. It would be amazing.
Yeah. I have to say I'm a bit scared for the UK, because I think it kind of liked brave decisions, brave artistic decisions, like things that are disturbing in film and stuff like that. But we've become the society's kind of become a bit like wanting to shape everything and to censor things. The idea that censorship and control and cancelling is a good thing is kind of like is a threat to very creative ventures, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting challenge. I think as well, it's such a limited amount of people who make those decisions about what films get made and supported and funded. And often I think it's a sort of a bit of a closed shop from my understanding, from almost a class-based system. Or they want those costume dramas because those are the ones they want to go and watch. They want those poverty porn, kind of films, because they
those
want
two
to.
genres.
Yeah,
those two genres are very predictable, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are, and they would never watch the Diana Clone. They wouldn't go to the cinema. They want to watch the latest Keira Knightley, Jane Austen or whatever. And I think that's, until we have people making those decisions who are open and broader to it's going to be really hard. And these people like yourselves are going to put their own money and their own time and their own passion into it, and we're going to get these little green shoots coming through.
But I think but it's
I'm glad I found it.
I think there's a UK has a sense of freedom traditionally. I don't know. That's partly because it was wealthy and had people going to art school and stuff like that. Like in developing countries, you can't have so much easily. But if fear is a bit of as a creativity killer, if you feel the fear to, have certain scenes, and you would have to be fair. Some of the scenes in the Diana Clone would definitely offend some people, and so fears. But but a lot of drama is about antisocial behaviors or conflict about somebody transgressing the social norms. It's part of drama. It's actually the heart. So
it really is, isn't it? Yeah.
You can't have everyone going around behaving nicely and not antisocially.
Well, you're spot on. As you were saying that, I was thinking, the amount of times people would come to me and I would just write page and page of dialogue, and somebody would just go, "Where's the inciting incident?" And I suppose the key word is inciting, isn't it? To incite something is to kind of, like you say, it has to be relatively transgressive or challenging, otherwise it's not inciting.
It's got to be a bit. It's got to be a bit offensive. I think that's maybe why in in totalitarian states like Russia after the revolution, they made not many successful plays and compared to and storybooks, fictions, novels, which are famous for. Maybe because if you have a totalitarian society where offensive things can't be aired, then maybe it damages drama. But
it's not always a sort of a set way of responding to something, and you don't really have that response to something that is bland or middle of the road without anything challenging it. It's just kind of moving wallpaper, isn't it? So people will just kind of sit and eat their, especially particularly the way we consume media. We literally sat mostly at home now, takeaway or whatever, on the phone scrolling. It doesn't have to be anything particularly challenging. It's just there, isn't it? So to watch your film, we actually we had to put everything to one side, switch off all our devices, and really get involved. And we did, and it was like there were 6 of us, and we had such a great afternoon, like I say, even on that small level, hopefully that is a really positive way to kind of finish our interview, but also to say thank you so much for being open to having a chat with me, going to the effort of getting the disguise and explaining so much. So obviously you want people to go out and buy and watch the film. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned in terms of getting eyes on the film?
No, I think you did it justice.
Oh, good. Because I'll put all the links in the description as well once I've edited and put this together. Thank you so much, Jason, for your time and your passion and just for giving me a really cool film to show my friends, because I was the one that found it, so it was my head on the chopping block, and they were like, "Oh, I'm glad we watched that." So yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man,
Matthew, thank you so much for actually inviting me to your show.
Oh, that's all right. You're very welcome. Anytime. I'm sure we'll keep in touch. But thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and
right.
I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks,
Take care.
Jason. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. So there we are. The interview with Jason Ritchie. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. I was really nervous about doing that interview. I'm just so impressed that he made a deliberately challenging film and put everything into it. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting somebody maybe who wasn't aware of what he made, if that made sense. I wasn't sure. Especially because of the disguise and things like that. But I kind of understand now that the disguise element of it. Well, that was fascinating. You need to watch the film, though, if you haven't seen it. I'll put the links in. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you really enjoyed the interview. I did, getting to know Jason and how he's put that film together. And it's took so long, and it is a wild film. It is a wild, I don't think I've ever seen a film like it. So watch it. Tell me what you think. And thanks for watching again. Thanks for supporting the channel. If you'd like to subscribe, that'd be great, because I'm going to try and do more things like this and promote as many people as I can and just have lots of fun with horror. And I'm not sure this counts as horror, but there's definitely some horror elements in it. It is definitely a sort of unique endeavor. So yeah, speak to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.